Drizzle season just dropped, and as with every season, we got a new big run. This time, the stage was Umami Ruins, and we got the chance to try out the new Grizzco Dualies. I played this event quite a bit, and I think it might be the best big run we've gotten so far. So in this video, I will talk about the Grizzco Dualies, how they work, and some tips on how to play them more effectively. And I also want to talk a bit about Umami Ruins because it's a pretty strange and unique map compared to what we usually get with big run. So let's start off with our new weapon, the Grizzco Dualies. I actually got to see footage of the Dualies before Big Run, and I was really intrigued. They seemed like a pretty complicated weapon to learn, and they can be to a certain extent. So let's quickly talk about some attributes of the Grizzco Dualies. Something that really surprised me at first is that the spread mode is extremely short-ranged, even shorter than the Dapple Dualies. You really only want to use this when you're low on ink. Otherwise, you'll probably want to roll before shooting at anything, because after a roll you have longer range and a faster fire rate, so that's what you'll be using most of the time to deal with bosses. But the main gimmick of this weapon is the dodge rolls. First of all, they're infinite, so you only stop when you run out of ink. And every time you roll, there's an explosion around you. These explosions deal quite a bit of damage and excel against hordes of lesser salmonids. They also paint really well, which is always a great thing. Keeping the map inked is extremely important for survivability and mobility. By the way, the rolls also have bomb properties, so they can kill flyfish. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to do it without dying on Umami because of the flyfish spots, but I anticipate it being a bit easier on normal salmon run stages since they have a bit more height. Even though the regular firing modes of this weapon do pretty normal damage, don't think that the Grizzco Dualies are bad by any means. They can be very powerful when used well. I personally use the rolls to clear hordes of lessers. Those also often block the path to shore bosses, so I use that to get to the shore and deal with the bosses there. I also use them to paint when I noticed that my teammates were getting stuck in salmonid ink. When it comes to bosses, I mostly use the normal firing mode after rolling, and honestly the kill time is pretty good, so I had no real issues with that. But sometimes I'd still roll left and right if lessers were starting to approach me, or if I just wanted that extra damage. I'd say the main downside of the Grizzco Dualies is that you need a lot of self-control to use them. It is extremely easy to roll into Steel Eel or Scrapper and just die. The biggest issue I encountered is really how easy it is to feed and be overconfident with the weapon. Also, the rolls go further than regular Dualies, so try not to roll into the water. I'm totally not saying that because I threw multiple games by falling in the water. The rolls do take a bit of ink, so make sure you don't roll into a pack of salmonids when you're low, but honestly, it doesn't feel too bad. You can still get a lot of rolls out of one ink tank, and the explosions are definitely worth the ink cost. The Grizzco Dualies can be a very powerful weapon when you know how and when to use its different attributes. It excels at dealing with hordes of lessers and getting overwhelmed by them, it can paint really well, still kill faster than most regular weapons, and the mobility allows it to survive in tough situations. Honestly, this might be my new favorite Grizzco weapon because it feels so good to play with. Blowing up like 25 lessers at once is incredibly fun, and I cannot wait to play with it again. But enough with the Grizzco Dualie propaganda, let's talk about Umami Ruins. At first, I really didn't know what to think about this stage because it's quite different from what we usually get with Big Run. But now that the event is done, I can say that this was the most fun map we've had so far. High Tide was amazing to farm eggs. Something that did surprise me though is that there was only one spawn point for salmonids. It's a small thing, but it made this High Tide feel unique. The only difficulty was that it played pretty similarly to Mariner's Bay, meaning that it could be pretty hard to get to the shore bosses since they were at the end of the map. And luring or using snatchers was important as to not have huge stacks of eggs stuck at the end. It did have that right path though, and that was super helpful to get to flyfish and stingers. High Tide here was great to farm eggs, and it felt really fun to play on if everyone in the lobby knew how to handle it. Normal Tide was also really fun. I love how most of that block in mid was inkable, and they also added ramps to it. You could actually lure bosses to either the top or bottom of the basket, and that was really cool and practical. By the way, you can deliver eggs directly to the basket as long as you're near its metal platform as seen here, which is why we could lure the bosses at either the top or bottom of the basket. It's another one of those small things that made the map really interesting to me. I also really liked those safe areas near the shore that made it easier to deal with big shots and stingers. Low tide was not very notable compared to the rest, but I do want to mention that comically large wall. I don't know, I just think it looks so funny, but it was actually very useful to get the shore bosses at the top. There was, again, that basket platform thing where you could directly put in eggs from that bottom area. And I mention this because sometimes it's better to put eggs in the basket directly instead of throwing them, since throwing uses as much ink as a bomb. So it could be better to conserve that ink, especially if you need to fight or get out of a bad situation. Low tide did get pretty cramped at the top area though, and I wish there was a bit more space to lure those bosses closer to the basket. But overall, Umami Ruins is the most fun stage we've gotten so far for Big Run. Playing on it felt really nice with all the movement options, and it complemented the new Grizzco Dualies very well. And as usual, I really loved the inkable walls. They made the map feel much more open, and I had a fantastic time during this Big Run. And those were my thoughts on the most recent Big Run and the new Grizzco Dualies. I think it's safe to say that this has been the best Big Run so far. My personal favorite map is still Inkblot just because it was complicated, but my favorite event overall is this most recent one. I just think it was done very well, and I know most people had a ton of fun with the event, and that's what matters. Anyway, let me know what you think of the new Grizzco Dualies in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye.